The scent of cinnamon and apple from Aunt Margaret's pie lingered in the air of the colonial-style house in Connecticut. But even the comforting aroma couldn't disguise the tension that cut through the atmosphere like a blade. It was the first Thanksgiving since Grandpa Henry's death, and the entire Whitmore family was gathered in the living room adorned with antique furniture and portraits of past generations. My name was Sarah. I was 28 years old, and I had always been considered the black sheep of the family. While my cousins graduated from Harvard and Yale, I chose to be a public school teacher. While they drove BMWs and lived in mansions, I lived in a modest apartment in Brooklyn, teaching underprivileged children. "Sarah, could you bring more wine from the kitchen?" asked my Aunt Margaret, without even looking me in the eyes. I was always treated like the family's maid, the one who served, cleaned, and was then forgotten in important conversations. I returned with the bottle of Merlot and sat discreetly in the corner of the sofa. My cousin Derek, a 35-year-old lawyer with a permanent fake smile, was giving a speech about his latest courtroom victories. "As I was saying," Derek continued, adjusting his Italian tie, "my firm just closed $1 million deal. Dad always said I inherited the family business gene." "Unlike others," murmured my Aunt Patricia, casting a glance in my direction. "That's true," Derek agreed, his voice gaining a higher tone. "Some of us really honor Grandpa Henry's legacy. He built an empire from scratch, and we continue that tradition." I felt my heart racing. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. "Grandpa Henry always told me that money wasn't everything," I commented softly. "He said that helping others was what really mattered." The room fell silent for a moment. Derek stared at me with contempt. "Oh, of course," he said, letting out a harsh laugh. "The granddaughter who never achieved anything in life wants to give moral lessons. Sarah, you don't understand anything about business or money." "I didn't say I understood business," I replied, trying to stay calm. "I just said that Grandpa valued other things too." "Other things?" Derek stood up, his face red with anger. "What other things? You live in a 2-room apartment, drive a 10-year-old car, and earn a teacher's salary. What legacy is that?" "Derek, stop," I tried to interrupt, but he continued. "No," he shouted, pointing his finger at me. "Shut up, you're nothing. You haven't built anything, haven't achieved anything. You're nothing but a disappointment to this family." The silence that followed was deafening. I felt tears burning in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I looked around the room. Everyone was looking down, embarrassed, but no one defended me. "You're right, Derek," I finally said, my voice trembling. "I really am nothing, at least not in this family's eyes." I stood up and walked toward the door, feeling the weight of all the years of humiliation and rejection. But before leaving, I turned one last time. "Just one thing, Derek. Are you sure you knew Grandpa Henry as well as you think?" And with that question left hanging in the air, I left the house, hearing only the sound of the door closing behind me. 3 days later, I was sitting at the kitchen table in my small Brooklyn apartment, still feeling the pain from Derek's cruel words. The coffee was getting cold in the cup, while I looked at an old photo of Grandpa Henry and me, taken when I was only 12 years old. In it, we were in his house's garden, and he was teaching me to plant roses. "The most beautiful things grow slowly, Sarah," he used to say, "and they always bloom when we least expect it." The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Margaret, my aunt. "Sarah, dear." Her voice sounded different, less haughty than usual. "Could you come here today? Dad's lawyer, Mr. Edmund, wants to talk to the whole family about the will." My heart skipped a beat. "Will? But didn't you say you had already resolved everything?" "Well, apparently there are some details that need to be clarified. Please come, at 3 o'clock. When I arrived at the family house, the same room where I had been humiliated 3 days before was full again. Derek was there, wearing an even more expensive suit, talking animatedly with an elderly man with white hair. Certainly Mr. Edmund. "Ah, Sarah arrived," announced Margaret, as if my presence were just a formality. Derek barely looked in my direction. "Can we start soon, Mr. Edmund? I have an important meeting at 4. The lawyer, a man of about 70 years with penetrating blue eyes, opened his leather briefcase and put on his glasses. "Well, as you all know, I'm here to discuss Henry Whitmore's last wishes," he began, his deep voice echoing through the room. "I must say that, in my 40 years of career, I have rarely seen such a singular will." "Singular?" asked Patricia, frowning. "Yes. You see, Henry came to me 2 years ago, shortly before falling ill, and made some very specific changes to his will. Changes that he insisted be kept in absolute secrecy until this moment." Derek leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with greed. "Well, what's the division? I assume that, as the oldest grandson and the family's lawyer, I'll receive the largest part of the business." Mr. Edmund looked at Derek for a long moment before responding. "Actually, Derek, let me read exactly what Henry wrote." He cleared his throat and began. "I, Henry Charles Whitmore, being of sound mind, leave all my assets, including Whitmore Industries, my properties and investments, valued at approximately $50 million. The room fell into absolute silence. Even I was shocked by the amount. To my granddaughter, Sarah Elizabeth Whitmore. The silence was broken by the sound of Derek choking on his coffee. "That's impossible," he shouted, standing up so quickly that he knocked over his chair. "There must be an error." "There is no error," continued Mr. Edmund calmly. "But there's more. Henry also left explanatory letters for each family member." Margaret was pale. "Letters?" "Yes. Sarah, your letter is particularly long. Henry spent months writing it." The lawyer handed me a sealed envelope with my name written in Grandpa's familiar handwriting. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope. The letter began like this. "My dear Sarah, if you're reading this, it means the time has finally come for the truth to emerge. During all these years, I watched how you were treated by our family, and my heart broke at every Christmas, every gathering, every moment when your kindness and intelligence were ignored." I continued reading in silence, tears beginning to roll down my face. Derek was trying to look over my shoulder. "What does he say?" Derek demanded. "Read it out loud." I looked at him, remembering his cruel words 3 days before. "Be quiet, Derek. You're nothing but a greedy man who never understood what really mattered to Grandpa Henry." The tension in the room was palpable as I held Grandpa Henry's letter. Derek was red with anger. Patricia seemed about to faint, and Margaret kept repeating, "This can't be right," like a mantra. "Mr. Edmund," Derek said, trying to control his voice, "surely there must be a way to contest this. My grandfather clearly wasn't in his right mind in his final years." The lawyer adjusted his glasses and smiled slightly. "Actually, Derek, I anticipated that objection. Henry insisted that we conduct a complete psychological evaluation before finalizing the will. He was examined by 3 different psychologists. All confirmed his complete mental capacity." I looked at the letter again, my voice trembling as I read aloud. "Sarah, you were the only one who visited me in the hospital when no one else came. You were the only one who remembered my 80th birthday when everyone else was too busy. You were the only one who genuinely cared about me as a person, not as a bank account." Derek interrupted. "That's ridiculous. I visited Grandpa many times." "Twice in 2 years," I continued reading from the letter, "and both times to ask for money to borrow for your failed investments." Derek's face went white. "How did he know about—" "He knew everything, Derek." I continued reading. "Sarah, your family doesn't know, but I hired a private investigator 3 years ago. I wanted to know what each of my grandchildren really did with their lives." Margaret stood up abruptly. "Dad spied on us?" Mr. Edmund confirmed with a nod. Henry wanted to make sure his assets would go to the right person. Sarah, he discovered your volunteer work on weekends, how you use your own salary to buy supplies for your students, how you cared for Mrs. Rodriguez, your elderly neighbor when she was sick. I felt tears running down my face. I had never told anyone in the family about these things. He also discovered, continued Mr. Edmund, looking directly at Derek, about your gambling debts, about how you embezzled money from the family charity fund last year, and about how you told your friends that you couldn't wait for the old man to die and leave the inheritance. Derek stood up violently. That's a lie. We have recordings, said Mr. Edmund simply. Henry was very meticulous. The letter continued, and I read the most important part. Sarah, you always wondered why I gave you simple gifts, books, flowers from the garden, long conversations. It was because I knew you valued these things. Your cousins only came to me when they needed money. You came to me when you needed advice, company, love. You visited me not because I was rich, but because I was your grandfather. And Patricia finally spoke, her voice small. Dad, we loved you too. He left letters for all of you, said Mr. Edmund, distributing the envelopes. Perhaps you'd like to read them privately. Derek opened his letter immediately, his eyes quickly scanning the text. His expression changed from anger to shock, then to something that looked like shame. What does he say, Derek? I asked, my voice stronger now. Derek looked at me, and for the first time in years, I didn't see arrogance in his eyes. He says he forgives me, that he hopes I'll use this as an opportunity to become a better man. Grandpa's letter to me ended with a revelation that would change everything. Sarah, there's one last thing you need to know. The reason your family always treated you differently isn't because you're not successful. It's because you remind me of your grandmother, my great love. She was also a teacher, also helped others before herself. Your family was always jealous of the special love I felt for you both. Now you have the resources to continue doing good in the world, but on a much larger scale. Use them wisely, my dear granddaughter. The silence in the room was profound. Finally, Derek spoke, his voice broken. Sarah, I'm sorry for what I said on Thanksgiving, for how I always treated you. Grandpa was right. You really are the best of all of us. 6 months had passed since that day that changed everything. I was sitting in Grandpa Henry's old office, which was now mine, looking out the window at the garden where he had taught me to plant roses. The flowers were blooming beautifully. He was right. The most beautiful things really do grow slowly. The door opened and Derek entered, carrying a folder of documents. In recent months, he had become my right-hand man in managing the company, and our relationship had completely changed. Sarah, the scholarship program numbers came in, he said, placing the papers on the desk. We managed to give full scholarships to 200 underprivileged children this year. I smiled, remembering how everything changed after that day. My first decision as an heiress was to transform Whitmore Industries into a company with social purpose. We kept the profitable businesses, but directed 60% of the profits to education and community programs. Derek, do you remember what you said about me being nothing? He lowered his head, still embarrassed. Sarah, I've apologized thousands of times. I was an arrogant idiot who... Stop, I interrupted, smiling. I'm not bringing this up to hurt you. I'm bringing it up because I want you to know that your words, as painful as they were, gave me strength to prove that I was something. Margaret entered the room at that moment, carrying a bouquet of roses from the garden. She had also changed a lot. Now she worked as a volunteer in our foundation, helping needy families. The roses are beautiful this year, she said, placing them in a vase. Dad would be proud to see how you transformed not just the company, but all of us. It was true. Patricia had started a mentorship program for young businesswomen. Other cousins who barely spoke to me now came regularly, wanting to contribute to the social projects. The inheritance had revealed not only the truth about Grandpa Henry, but also the best in each of us. The phone rang. It was the principal from the school where I used to work. "Sarah, I just wanted to tell you that the new library your foundation funded was inaugurated today. The children are ecstatic. They made thank you cards for you." I felt my heart warm. This was the kind of call that really mattered. "Please send the cards. I'll frame them all." After hanging up, Derek looked at me with admiration. "You know, Sarah, I think I finally understand why Grandpa chose you. It wasn't just because you were kind. It was because you had the vision to use money to really change the world." I picked up the framed photo of Grandpa Henry from the desk. He always said that money is just a tool. What matters is how you use it. At that moment, Mr. Edmund appeared at the door. "Sarah, forgive the interruption, but I have one last surprise from your grandfather." "Another surprise?" He smiled and handed me a small box. He left instructions for me to give this to you exactly 6 months after the reading of the will. I opened the box carefully. Inside was a simple ring with a small rose engraved and a note. "Sarah, this was your grandmother's ring. She always said she wanted it to be given to the granddaughter who most resembled her. Now you know why the family sometimes was jealous of you. You carry the best of both of us. Wear this ring and always remember, you were never nothing. You were always everything. With eternal love, Grandpa Henry." Tears rolled down my face as I put on the ring. Derek and Margaret were crying too. "You know what's most incredible?" said Derek, wiping his eyes. "He didn't just give us money or leave money. He gave us a chance to be better people." I stood up and walked to the window, looking at the garden where it all began. The roses were in full bloom, and I could almost hear Grandpa Henry's voice in the wind. The most beautiful things grow slowly and always bloom when we least expect it. I turned to Derek and Margaret, my family who had finally learned what really mattered. "You know," I said, smiling, "I think Grandpa Henry orchestrated all of this. He knew that the only way to truly unite us was to show us that love is worth more than any inheritance." Derek laughed, a genuine sound I hadn't heard in years. He was always smarter than all of us put together. And there, in that room full of memories and new beginnings, I understood that Grandpa Henry's true inheritance wasn't the $50 million. It was the lesson that a person's value isn't measured by what they have, but by what they do with what they have. I looked at Grandma's ring on my finger and smiled. I was nothing. Derek was wrong that day. I was everything. I was love, I was compassion, I was hope. And now I had the resources to spread that throughout the entire world. The roses in the garden swayed gently in the breeze, as if Grandpa Henry himself was agreeing.